Xtalks connects professionals in the life science, medical device, and food industries with useful content like webinars, job openings, articles, and virtual meetings to help you succeed in your career. This food industry-focused podcast brings together some of our editorial staff to share insights into the latest B2B industry news to help keep you up to date. This week on the show, we are discussing the bacteria behind the baby formula shortage and Coca-Cola's $650 million bet on Fairlife milk. And today's episode is sponsored by Gilson. More from them later. Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Xtalks Food Podcast. I'm Sydney Perlmutter, Senior Food Industry Journalist and Webinar Moderator at Xtalks.com, and this week I'm joined by Vera Kovacevic and Sarah Hant. Thanks for coming today. So I'm going to start us off with a story about a bacteria that was linked to recent baby formula shortages and the Abbott infant formula recall called Cronobacter Sakazakii, and it could soon join the federal disease watch list. In June, the Council of State and Territorial Epidemiologists, or CSTE, will vote to decide if it will officially recommend adding Cronobacter infections to the list of nationally notifiable diseases to the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC. So if you had never heard of it, like myself, it's also known as Territorial Sakazakii, and Cronobacter is a bacteria that can cause severe infections, particularly in infants, and is associated with, unfortunately, a high mortality rate. And it was first identified in 1958 by Dr. Yoshikazu Sakazakii in Japan, and it was later renamed Cronobacter Sakazakii in recognition of his contributions to the field of microbiology. The bacteria is commonly found in the environment, including water, soil, and dry foods, such as powdered infant formula, which is why it's often, attributed to children. The bacteria is able to survive in these harsh environments for extended periods of time, which makes it difficult to control and eliminate. Now, in an outbreak that the CDC investigated last year, 4 babies were sickened, including 2 who had died. And all the infants who had been fed the baby formula manufactured at the same Abbott Laboratories plant in Sturgis, Michigan. And it triggered an extensive investigation by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration and ultimately stopping the production at the facility for months. And we spoke about this in a podcast a couple months ago. Now, the symptoms in Cronobacter Sakazakii, like I said, it particularly affects infants, and they're very vulnerable as their immune systems are still developing and their digestive tracts aren't fully formed yet. And infections can occur when infants consume contaminated formula or other food products. And in some cases, Cronobacter can also be transmitted from person to person, particularly in hospital settings. So symptoms can include fever, irritability, lethargy, poor feeding, and seizures. And in severe cases, the infection can lead to meningitis, sepsis, and other life-threatening complications. And infants who are infected with Cronobacter require prompt medical treatment, including antibiotics and supportive care. And in response to the threat posed by the illness, the World Health Organization and other organizations have developed guidelines for safe preparation and handling of infant formula. And these guidelines include recommendations for proper hygiene practices, such as washing hands before preparing formula, using sterile water and equipment, and avoiding reusing formula that has been left out at room temperature. Despite these efforts, Cronobacter Sakazakii remains a significant public health threat, and particularly in developing countries where access to safe water and sanitation is limited. And that's why stakeholders and lawmakers are hoping to add Cronobacter infections to the list of nationally notifiable diseases to the CDC. The addition of an illness to the national list of notifiable diseases, though, can have a significant impact on the reporting and tracking of outbreaks. So, for example, after E. coli 0157 was added to the list in 1994, and reporting requirements were implemented in most states by 2000, the number of reported outbreaks tripled. However, it takes time for changes to be implemented. So if the CSTE votes to add Cronobacter infections to the national list, the CDC will need to approve the recommendation. And if approved, state and local governments will need to adjust their reporting laws and processes for doctors to report cases to health departments, which will then forward reports to the CDC. And data collection is unlikely to begin before the beginning of next year, and it could take longer depending on state legislative sessions. Now, currently, only Minnesota and Michigan require doctors to report Cronobacter cases, which can be diagnosed as sepsis or meningitis, conditions that can result from the infection. And the push to add Cronobacter to the federal disease watch list is underway, and the vote will take place next month. But I'm sure you're both wondering or surprised that it isn't already on the list of nationally notifiable diseases. But what do you guys think about this? Are you surprised that it isn't already on this list?
Yeah, definitely. But maybe one reason is that only a couple of babies a year can die from this infection, so maybe the government agency thought it isn't worth being on a list like that. Perhaps that's the reason, just the number of cases, but there could be more once it's on the list.
Yeah, especially since you're saying some of the cases have the potential to be, misdiagnosed as other things, right? And so maybe there are more cases than we know. I think it's interesting. It's not already on that list. And just in taking a look here at the CDC's website about it, they say Cronobacter is just naturally found in the environment and, on surfaces within people's homes. And so I wonder if the real danger comes in when the formula is contaminated either at the manufacturing facility or within your home, due to improper preparation. And then, maybe the bacteria proliferates, and then, of course, the baby is ingesting all of that. And so when you were first talking about this, I thought, okay, it seems like there's two different issues here. One is contaminated formula. And to that point, you said, a few cases of the illness were linked back to that Abbott Labs plant in Michigan. And then the other side of it is, improper preparation of if it's powdered formula. And I thought, well, it seems like the contamination could be coming from different sources then, maybe within your home or at a manufacturing facility. But then when I was looking more deeply into this, it said, I always assumed that the reason for, boiling water before you prepare formula is to make sure the water itself is sterilized. But I guess it's also to make sure that the powdered formula, anything in there is sterilized and neutralized because you're mixing it with the boiling water. So, yeah, I thought that was interesting because I kind of thought, what are we dealing with here? Is it more of a problem on the manufacturing side or on the preparation side in people's homes? And, seems like it could be both, but there's kind of, at least on the home side, of an easy way to mitigate this, as long as you have access, of course, to, clean water to begin with and the ability to boil the water.
That's a very good point. I had never thought of that. I figured it was just to make sure the water itself was clean. But I guess, we hear more about the cases when it's from a manufacturing plant, right? Because then it's this was their fault and it was proven and it makes, national news, and now they're being investigated. But yeah, I mean, it's true. I kind of wonder how many cases would be coming from just improper hygiene in the home versus manufacturing. And if this does get added to the list of notifiable diseases, I wonder if they would break it down by sort of where it came from, or if they would be able to even figure that out.
Yeah, that kind of looks into the where outbreaks are coming from, or if it's more of a localized issue. I think, just coming from a parent's perspective as well, in recent years, I think, at least in developed countries where we have access to, safe and clean water, these recommendations to boil water before preparing formula, to sterilize any feeding equipment, with steam and things like that beforehand, I think that parents have gotten a little more lax with that because it's been found to maybe not be as necessary. But certainly this outbreak of this Cronobacter makes me think that maybe those public health measures need to be doubled down on so that new parents understand, no, you know what? Even if you have access to clean and safe water, this is still something that you need to do when you're preparing the formula. Because it can be, a very like laborious process to be like cleaning bottles and then sterilizing and then boiling the water and then cooling the water. And, you're feeding a newborn so often that I can see, taking some shortcuts because you have access to clean water, thinking this will be fine, but maybe it's not.
So mother of none here, I just have a question. Can you put this in the microwave to like boil the milk? Is that even safe? I guess depends if it's suitable for the microwave. I think probably most baby feeding tools are not.
Yeah, I think it's I think a lot of them are. So you can sterilize a lot of bottles in the microwave. There are like special sterilization bags that you can buy, and you put a little bit of water in, and it essentially steam sterilizes them without you having to have like a separate steam sterilizer or boil them, on the stove. However, they don't recommend that you heat things like this in the microwave because of the uneven heating that a microwave causes. And so you can get, not only might you be, not sterilizing effectively the whole volume of liquid, but you can also get like hot spots within the milk. So even if you gave it like a little shake and tested it on your wrist and it felt fine, there might be like a super hot section of that liquid. From cooking anything in the microwave, right? It's not an even way to cook. So yeah, good question. They definitely don't recommend that. And so that seems like it would be an easier way to do it. But it's not recommended.
Yeah, I know in some countries, I guess maybe more of the developing countries, like milk can be sold raw or unpasteurized, and you just have to boil it at home before you drink it. Mm-hmm. I definitely know where I'm from, you can still buy milk that way. And I do remember my parents telling me, like, when they fed me formula, they would warm it up and put it in a thermos so it'd be warm overnight. Yeah. So I wonder if parents who grew up in, like, kind of developing countries are kind of thought, well, of course we would first maybe boil formula, like, just like normal milk, just as a precaution.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's a really good point. I think there are differences in depending on your upbringing and where you live currently and things like that. That's a really good point.
And I also just wonder in general, like how many parents are aware of any sort of illnesses that can be, come from formula or just, improper hygiene. Like I obviously I'm not a parent, but I'd never heard of this before. And since only like a few children were impacted, I really wonder like how, like whether parents know about this or not, or since it's not yet, nationally recorded or it's not reportable yet. How many people really know about it and would know what to do if an infection occurred. But maybe adding it to the list will come with more education because, in the case of E. coli, like that was a massive shift in terms of how many more cases were reported each year. And now we all know about E. coli.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think it's also probably a matter of like risk benefit. So, certainly public education to make sure that formula is prepared safely and correctly is important. But I wonder if, and I don't know, I'm speculating here, maybe part of the reason why they haven't added Cronobacter to the list yet, in addition to the reason you mentioned, Vera, because maybe there haven't been that many infants, affected so far, is sort of like there are so many things, for parents to worry about. And so maybe this adds another level. And so, it could be that regulators are looking at, okay, how serious is this threat? And does something else need to be done in order to, educate parents and make sure that we're keeping babies healthy? I don't know if that's the case. I'd like to think that's the case from a parent perspective because there's so much definitely to think about and worry about. And a lot of the worry outside of these sort of foodborne illnesses can be, overly inflated. And so I think, maybe they're looking at, okay, what's the best way to go about this? And make sure they protect public health.
Yes, hopefully that, and it's nothing to do with financial, it's not too expensive or anything. We can't have that. If it is, then forget about it. But
we'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Gilson.
Looking for ways to automate your tedious lab tasks? Gilson can help. We automate sample dispensing and transfers so you can walk away and focus on your research. Choose from pre-configured systems or assemble your own to match your application. We blend in with your existing lab workflows so you can avoid reworking your already established procedures. Gilson can even support you with protocol development to speed up your time to automation. Go your own way with our scalable and precise robotic liquid handling systems. Head to go.gilson.com/xtalks to learn more or speak to an expert. That's go.gilson.com/xtalks.
All right. Well, moving on to another story. We have Fairlife milk. This is a milk brand owned by Coca-Cola, which I found really interesting because you don't really attribute Coke with milk. But Fairlife is receiving a significant boost of $650 million as the company prepares to construct a new production facility in Webster, upstate New York. And Coca-Cola will be, providing this money. Scheduled to commence construction this year, the 100-acre plant will become fully operational by 2025 and will be strategically situated between two key U.S. dairy producing regions in Rochester and Niagara. The facility will procure milk from nearby dairy cooperatives to manufacture Fairlife's drinks, which will then be supplied to retailers throughout the area. And the company said that the new facility is expected to employ approximately 250 hourly and salaried workers. And Fairlife currently owns and operates two production facilities in the U.S. in Coopersville, Michigan, and Goodyear, Arizona. So this is a lot of money for Coca-Cola to be, shelling out. So here's what you need to know about the company, its controversies, and why it's truly dominating the milk market right now. So the Fairlife milk brand was founded in 2012 by husband and wife duo Mike and Sue McCloskey. The couple are dairy farmers and also founded Select Milk Producers, which is a co-op of 92 family-owned dairies. And Fairlife was created to offer a new type of milk that could provide families with better nutrition from the wholesome goodness of real milk. And I've seen Fairlife before. I've never purchased it, but I did not actually know that it, differentiated itself nutritionally from your typical milk. So Fairlife boasts 50% higher levels of protein and calcium while containing 50% less sugar compared to traditional milk, and it's also lactose-free. And this remarkable achievement was made possible through a novel cold filtration method that was patented by co-founder Mike McCloskey. This process enables the extraction of targeted nutrients such as protein and calcium while isolating fats and sugars from the milk. So in 2015, the Milk Maven caught the attention of the Coca-Cola Company, which purchased a 42.5% stake in Fairlife with the option to acquire the remaining shares over time. And it did do that in 2020, and it acquired the remaining 57.5% stake in the brand to become the sole owners of Fairlife and extended sales nationwide. And they don't just sell typical classic milk. Fairlife sells a variety of dairy-based products, including creamers, protein shakes, and flavored milk drinks. And its creamers are made with ultra-filtered milk and come in a range of flavors like hazelnut, caramel, and vanilla. Its protein shakes are also available in a variety of flavors and contain 30 grams of protein per serving. And its flavored milk drinks come in chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, cookies, and cream flavors and contain more protein and less sugar than traditional flavored milk. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about some of its controversies. So it has seen a couple since its launch. Now, in 2019, an animal rights group released an undercover video showing workers at one of Fairlife's milk suppliers, which is Fair Oaks Farms, abusing calves. So the video went viral, leading to protests and boycotts of Fairlife products. Pretty ironic, because it's called Fairlife. Now, in response to the controversy, Fairlife implemented new animal welfare policies and terminated its relationship with Fair Oaks Farms. And the company also launched an investigation in the matter. And additionally, aside from animal welfare controversy, Fairlife has also faced criticism over its marketing. In 2020, a class action lawsuit was filed against the company, alleging that its advertisement promoting Fairlife as humanely sourced were false and misleading. So they kind of go hand in hand. The lawsuit claimed that the company's dairy suppliers engaged in inhumane practices, including the separation of calves from their mothers shortly after birth and sending them to be raised in confinement. And last April, Coca-Cola agreed to pay $21 million to settle the animal abuse litigation. But this clearly has not stopped Fairlife from really excelling in the milk industry. According to data from Information Resources Inc., or IRI, U.S. milk category sales in 2022 exceeded $15.32 billion, representing a year-over-year increase of over 7%. However, despite the increase in revenue, unit sales declined by 3.3% to $4.627 billion. But one standout was Fairlife, which saw both dollar sales and unit sales skyrocket last year. Research conducted by the company indicated that the majority of Americans still prefer classic dairy milk to alternative options. And in fact, nearly 3/4 of Americans choose dairy milk over other types of milk, which can be partially attributed to the nostalgia from childhood memories of things like milk mustaches. But we'll take this research with a grain of salt because it was conducted by Fairlife. But whether it be the better-for-you appeal or the crisp, refreshing taste, Fairlife milk has been dominating the milk category, earning over $1 billion in annual retail sales in 2022 and becoming the top-selling brand in the value-added dairy category on Instacart. So despite the controversies surrounding the company and the milk industry as a whole, Fairlife is proof that traditional dairy is here to stay. Now, like I said, I've never purchased a Fairlife or tried it before. I typically just buy whatever milk is the cheapest, but I can only imagine that since, it's a value added and, more protein, less sugar, that it's got to be more expensive than traditional milk. And I'm wondering, if you do consume dairy and not plant-based milk. Are you looking for anything, value added in your milk, or are you using it more as sort of like just to put in cereal? And can you understand like the hype around it and why it's doing so well?
I mean, me personally, no, because I think milk already has a good balance of nutrients. I understand like lactose-free milk or like low-fat milk, but besides that, it's kind of hard to promote milk as like extra nutritious when it already is very nutritious from the get-go. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I've had Fairlife, I know, in the past, but I purchased it when there were no other options, like no cheaper options. And it definitely was like more. I think I only bought like a little bottle. I don't remember it tasting any different, but I can see the appeal, I guess, maybe more so in terms of its like other products as opposed to just the like 2% milk. I can see the appeal with some of the protein shakes for people who are looking for something with less sugar. That makes sense to me. And it has, I'm just looking at the picture here, some beverages that look like they're further fortified with like, omega-3s and stuff. Those kind of products make more sense to me. But talking a little bit about the controversy that you mentioned, that seems to me to be an issue with the overall dairy industry, right? There's certainly, it's a controversial industry, and I am also a milk drinker and I eat dairy and I like all of it, but I do find it hard sometimes to justify just like considering the cows need to be kept in like a constant state of lactation, and that must be stressful, and giving birth to calves that are then separated from their mothers. I think it's just a controversial industry. So not to say that whatever Fairlife was doing was like par for the course, and I'm also not trying to paint all dairy farmers with a broad brush and say there aren't good ones, because I know there are. But I think, because they had this undercover video, they were able to really point out, here's where the issue is. Mm-hmm. But what do you both think of the controversy there?
Yeah, I kind of thought the exact same thing. It's not an excuse at all, but it's certainly not, just Fairlife, who has been involved, I'm sure, in lawsuits and animal cruelty allegations and whatnot. And obviously, I mean, it was hard to deny in this case. We had the video. Coca-Cola paid the settlement, I think, just to get it over with. And it's a really like sad, I think, truth about the industry. And like I said, I don't think dairy, like real dairy, is going anywhere, but I just can only hope that, the surfacing of these videos and these lawsuits can just progress. Like it'll just help, hopefully, the industry just progress to be, to treat animals more fairly. It's literally in the name of the product, it really should be, not a given that this would happen. But yeah, it's certainly not just them. So yeah, I just did want to point it out because it's not always just been an uphill, it's not always been like just easy for them. They've had to go through the motions.
And I wonder if, and I'd like to hear your opinions on this, if with the rise of plant-based milks, I wonder if that'll create some market pressure, as they start to take a bit more of the market share, that maybe dairy farmers will need to do something to differentiate themselves and say, listen, I know the product we're making comes from animals, but like check out how well we treat them. Or if the market pressure from milk alternatives is going to really drive at least some smaller producers into the ground. I don't know. I wonder how much more expensive humanely, collecting milk would be, or at least more humanely than it's currently being done. I think though, no matter how you slice it, there's always going to be controversy. It's like very hard to divorce those two things, kind of like the traditional meat market. I mean, at the end of the day, no matter how well you treat the animals, you're still slaughtering them in order to get the meat. And so there's only so much that I think a meat producer could do in order to make it as humane and as honestly palatable for the consumer as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's just so ingrained in many people to just like, this is just how it is, like to eat dairy and meat and things like that. And I think there are certain points in over the past few years, many documentaries that have come out, and PETA is always like a driving force behind the vegan and vegetarian movement. But I truly think it always will boil down to like the individual at the end of the day and what they've been used to and what, like it's such like an individual choice. Right. And I can only hope though that things can be produced humanely without the price like skyrocketing, right? We don't deserve to have to pay so much more just for an animal to be treated like an animal, but yeah, it's sad. I want to be more optimistic about it, but these things only happened a couple years ago, right? So
yeah, back to the topic about like plant-based milk versus dairy. Well, being from Canada, I did see a lot of commercials from like the Canadian dairy farmers, so the dairy farmers of Canada. And right now it seems like their focus is more on sustainability and just being proud that it's like Canadian milk. It's their focus in the ads is about that, and not really so much about, we treat our animals humanely and well, so I think perhaps they should include that too in their YouTube ads that I'm seeing.
And one thing that like I notice about Fairlife that's different than other milk is just how it's packaged. I mean, you've got that like plastic bottle that typical milk that I buy, or here in Canada we have like bagged milk. So you could either buy like a 3 pack of bagged milk, or you just buy a carton of milk, which is I think just made out of like paper or like a cardboard based sort of thing. But I wonder if this is strategic in a way in terms of keeping it fresh, fresher for longer or something, because it has to be strategic, right? It kind of reminds me of like old glass milk bottles. Not that they look the same at all, but I think it's maybe just another point of differentiation, but there must be a purpose as well behind it.
Yeah, and that brings up like questions about what's the recyclability of this type of plastic bottle. We've seen a real phase out of certain types of plastic water bottles, I think, and yeah, good point with the bagged milk, because I'm not sure. I don't think that type of plastic is recyclable. And I mean, I don't know how many people would even be throwing that into their recycling bin if it was, right? So, yeah, fun fact, in BC, we don't have bagged milk. We've just got giant jugs. It's so strange.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like 2 or 3 liter jugs?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. And that's your only option, or do you have cartons as well?
Cartons as well, but it's the jugs as opposed to the bags. All of our American listeners will be like, what? Right now, they're used to the jugs. I think jugs is normal there, but yeah, just a little fun fact.
All right, well, that's the end of this episode of the Xtalks Food Podcast. If you like today's show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Thanks, everyone, and see you next week. Bye.
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 Thanks for listening to the Xtalks Food Industry Podcast. If you enjoyed our discussions today, please share the episode with your friends and colleagues, and be sure to subscribe in order to be notified when a new episode is released. To join in on the discussion, you can find Xtalks on social media, email podcast@xtalks.com, or comment on the articles directly. Links are in the show description. Take a moment to join our community at xtalks.com to get access to everything we have to offer, including webinars, job listings, virtual meetings, articles, and more. The views and opinions expressed in the podcast are those of the speakers sharing them. They should not be taken as professional advice and do not necessarily reflect the policy or position Honeycomb Worldwide. For further information, email us at podcast@xtalks.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.